Today's 15 Minutes of Fact here on WGRNradio.com should be renamed 25,000 Miles of Rugged Road, because if she hasn't already clocked that amount of travel in her Occupy Wall Street journey, she certainly will before she finally parks her RV, which is also aptly titled Occupy the Road. Our guest on the phone today is Janet Wilson, a lady some find controversial for her traveling around the U.S. in a van emblazoned with signs such as Release Bradley Manning and Info Collection Task Force Unit for Wikileaks, and of course having Occupy Wall Street prominently there as well. So she's been described as a mobile extension of the Occupy Wall Street protests. Her trip started in Seattle, Washington, down to San Diego, across the south to Atlanta, then up to New York City. Most recently, she camped out with the Occupiers at the 4th of July National Gathering in Philadelphia. So let's spend a few minutes with this female version of Willie Nelson's On the Road refrain, and I'm not belittling her by any stretch, as you'll learn, and see what we can determine to be true about the Occupy movement as seen through her experiences. So welcome to the show today, Janet.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you here. We all are. If you're familiar with 15 Minutes of Fact, we do our best to take a look at the Occupy movement through different people's eyes to get a 360-degree viewpoint and also insights that we wouldn't ordinarily have, because, frankly, how can we even find and locate people like you who have immersed themselves in the Occupy movement and who have something to tell us which is generally not reported on the mainstream press? So the first thing, in your case, that I want to be sure is to answer the question that's on everybody's mind, such as, why in the world are you doing this? Well, why leave the safe and tiny community of Gig Harbor, Washington, and travel from Occupy site to Occupy site? So tell us about that first.
Well, it started for me October 2nd in Zuccotti Park, and when 700 people were arrested for protesting, I was outraged. I don't know if the rest of the country was, and I think when I left there, I wanted to do a temperature check on America to find out what people were thinking and what we were going to do to regain some sanity. So it started out as that, basically, and then morphed into something huge.
Well, let me be sure I understand this. Were you actually at the Occupy event when Zuccotti Park started?
I wasn't there the day it started. I arrived October 2nd, and the 700 were arrested October 1st. And so I arrived the morning of the 2nd, and I was there until the 5th. And then I went to D.C. for the Stop the Machine, the October 2011, and then flew home.
Got it. So obviously this was an impactful moment in your life to be there the day after those mass arrests, to see what was happening in Zuccotti, meeting some of the occupiers, and then heading back home. What in the world occupied your mind while you were heading back?
Being in Zuccotti Park that day was life-changing for me. Seeing people come together like that, like nobody had seen before, the music, the artistic flair, the message that was being sent, the resistance to being oppressed, which is what obviously the police were trying to do when they arrested 700 people. I mean, I got the story from many people that they actually marched onto the bridge and led the march. So it was disturbing to me, but gratifying to see people standing up, and I was just amazed. And there were lots of people, and then I saw this girl holding a sign that said, "I'm not crazy, there are people like me," and I knew this was going to be big. I knew at the time. And I was flying out of Detroit. I was actually in Detroit on visiting an aunt, and instead of flying out that day, I just moved my flight a week and then drove down to see it for myself. I wanted to be part of it and to see it and feel it myself.
Well, that's not dissimilar from my experience. I was in Oregon on a family matter when Zuccotti first came on the scene, and I quickly flew back to New York because, like you, I sensed that there was something different, something very big about this, and I wanted to see for myself what was true. Mm-hmm. So there you are, you're back in Gig Harbor, and what decisions did you come to?
It took me a while. I knew when I left I was going to try and get some kind of bus or RV. I wasn't sure what that looked like because I had zero money and I was trying to figure out how I was going to put this together. but I had made friends with the media tech team. They knew I was doing it, and the plan was that I would get them out there to help support, and we would do live stream and that kind of thing. So it took me 3 weeks to a month to get the RV. I didn't qualify. I'm similar to a lot of people in America. I just don't have the money, and my house is less than the mortgage on it. Mortgages. So it was a challenge, but I ended up getting the loan private, and I had to get a 2003 or newer, and that RV is a 2003. And the reason I wanted it so desperately is because it was white, and I thought at the time we could put the message on there. I wanted to carry the message of Occupy, and I wasn't sure what that would look like. And it just happened when we were in the Oakland port shutdown. Well, actually, it happened in Portland first, because that was the very first group that I met, and we started making signs. And they made a sign that said, "Who's V RV?" And I just was amazed, and the sign was beautiful. And so the sign started going on the RV, and both were actually billboards of signage until it got to New York, and then that's where Clark and Julie from Violated put on the Wikileaks Bradley Manning support graphics.
I love the Who's V RV. It's so much like Whose Streets, Our Streets.
Yeah.
There's a theme I'm sure that you've noticed all the way in your travels from camp to camp. My question, which of course is you've answered now, how you're financially able to do this. I rather thought it might have been a perverse prank by the Koch brothers.
This is about as grassroots as it gets. I'll tell
pretty
you.
drastic prank, wouldn't you say? So obviously you're not an undercover agent. You're right out there in front of everybody. You're traveling from Occupy to Occupy. Without picking favorites, what's the most interesting Occupy? Obviously, you had a great experience in Portland, but in addition to Portland, what are the most interesting Occupy sites that you visited?
Oh, there's so many. Eugene, Oregon was an amazing one to me. It was the biggest one that I had seen. I think they told me they were feeding about 1,500 people in that camp. We actually saw a pirate wedding there. I mean, it was very unique, and a lot of the camps were unique, because we of course saw camps go up and then camps come down, and then we were in there when they were raided, and so there were so many different things. But I'm trying to think of the ones that stand out. Oakland, probably for the police force and brutality that I saw there that was so unnecessary. Jackson, Mississippi, they had a blues marathon there. There were 2,500 runners, and they actually had an office above a lawyer's office that was donated to them, and they had a really cool space. And then New Orleans, who actually have a warehouse and have their tents set up in a warehouse and have Occupy the stage there, was amazing. But there's been so many. Everybody's doing similar things, but different ways to get there. And I'm always amazed. I leave one camp and I say, "Boy, you guys are great. I can't believe it's so many." And then I go to the next camp and I'm like, "Oh, you guys are great. I can't believe it."
This is almost like asking someone who their favorite child is.
Yeah.
They're equally loved.
Yeah, there's just so many different things happening, and they're all different, but the message is the same. And to have a better world, to feed people and make sure people have homes, I think is the main thing. Good people.
Well, I know that your mission is to identify and visit occupiers throughout the United States, and you're focusing on social and economic injustices and all forms of oppression like that. So you're documenting stories, you're sharing stories. You have a lovely website that's up there, which I'll bring up in a minute. And, of course, you're espousing a number of unpopular causes, Wikileaks being one of them.
Yes.
A very brave person who unveiled to all of America the atrocities that Americans created or were created in America's name, and yet the person who reported the atrocities is the one being persecuted. And then that's Bradley Manning, of course, another good example of that. So it must be an awful lot for you to bite off and chew. How do you manage to do this?
I have a strong conviction, and that's that it doesn't matter whether it's a company or the government. The injustices that we see, if they're not brought forward, and we don't know about them, it's really hard to understand what's going on. my personal feeling is we're in a war we shouldn't be in. The fact that he allegedly gave these documents to Wikileaks, my concern was that immediately everybody's guilty. So they've taken him. He's spent, I don't know if it's 780 days now in prison, 500 of which are in solitary confinement. For the longest time wasn't charged with anything, just being held. I don't know how that happens in the United States, but apparently it does. And then for Julian Assange to have Wikileaks totally or almost shut down by the banks pulling his funding before he's convicted, I just had such a problem with it. So when I was asked would I represent and sponsor them, I was absolutely okay with it. I don't see him as a treasonist. I know some people do. I think the documents need to be read in their entirety. And if the government then comes forward and says this exactly what was top secret and put lives at risk, then we can talk about that. But so far that's not happened. So
nor will it happen. And if there's any treason, without going off the wall here, the treasonous people are the ones who are not allowing America to know what we are doing that is wrong and unjust and against our very basic nature, if not our constitutions. So there's so many parallels to what you're doing. They range from simple Steinbeck's Travels with Charlie, Kerouac's On the Road, even Woody Guthrie's travels and his claim at that time to have been to, quote, 45 of the 48 states. What is going to be your intention? When are you going to pull that RV up to your garage and call this trip completed?
Well, my husband asked the same question. He's at home in Gig Harbor, Washington with our 3 dogs, and he hasn't seen me except for once in the last 8 months. It was 8 months anniversary on the 4th of July. I don't think I can stop now because I haven't finished what I need to do. And so the next stop is we're going to leave from New York and head over to Pueblo. We had a property donated to us, and albeit it needs a lot of work, but the thing is the property was donated, and we now will have a headquarters in southern Colorado in Pueblo. And that all started just sitting on a corner, in a very busy corner, and talking to the people in the community. So there's a lot that's happened in the meantime, and we look at the social and economic justices, but we also try to do things about it. When we were in Michigan, they have an emergency management team that go out, and it's supposed to be used when budgets are mishandled and they go in, but it's been used in my opinion to rape and pillage the poor people and take land that isn't theirs. And I'm referring to Benton Harbor, where we were. They took a town with an 85% black population, took over land given to them, I think almost 100 years ago, by a gentleman and his wife, and then made it into a golf course with a $5,000 fee per year. So these kinds of things get me outraged. I don't even know where to start. I look at cities like Detroit.
Well, that's one of the challenges for people like you and me, for any decent citizen here in the United States, is that the outrages are so vast. They range from banks through the misappropriation of lands, the greed, the abuse. Certainly, you're not a popular person because you've stuck your head above the foxhole. Mm-hmm. I know that when you were traveling back from Washington, D.C. in your RV, you ended up getting on your convoy some people who drove along to make sure that you were safe, and those were the police. Now, what has been your experience with the police so far?
The police are so... I guess I'm amazed that we have this amount of resources, that we're using it for something as frivolous as the occupation, because I haven't seen the type of thing that would cause... the amount of police, the tanks, the weapons that I've seen. I don't understand it. That when we came from Philadelphia just recently, we came to Staten Island. We were going to come over the Outer Bridge connection. So we stopped there, waited for the marchers to come, and then it was police car, police car, police car. They shut down traffic. We had already made arrangements. We weren't walking on the bridge. We weren't going to do anything illegal. We'd made arrangements for 8 vehicles to come pick up the marchers and take them over the bridge. But it wasn't good enough. They wanted to escort us. They were front and back. They brought us over the bridge. We were supposed to meet in a park to have dinner with another 150 people, and they wouldn't allow us to go into the park. That to me should have people outraged. When our freedoms are attacked the way that they were that night, I don't know what to say.
This is where I am caused a great amount of wonder as to why people who belong to what is called the Tea Party could not be equally outraged. They show up in their RVs. There are no police following them. They are on the right side of the law, and yet abuses that they would not allow to happen to them, they seem to allow to happen to occupiers. Is there any way of communicating with these people that their needs are no different than ours in Occupy?
Well, I'll tell you the one thing, Jerry, that I've learned in this trip. I mean, after 114 cities, and these are unique cities, no one person has said that there's too little money in our political system. If the Tea Party and I mean, nobody asks me, oh, what party are you with? I think it's irrelevant. I think either party right now is not looking that good. I think the voters agree that they don't know who to vote for. So I don't even know what comes down to party. I would like to see every individual, no matter what party they're with, be outraged at what's going on in this country. Unless we stand up and fight for our freedoms. And I talk about in Philly, going to a park that says we have the freedom to assemble in Independent Mall, and it was totally fenced off. No one allowed, except for one entrance, which I'm sure they were doing face recognition. I'm not sure what the plan was, but it was. And then I had a person come up to me and say, "This is not the 4th of July celebration that we expected." To have the whole thing shut down for fear of a tent going up, to me was more of an outrage. And so I want people to stand up regardless of what party they belong to, whether it's Tea Party or whatever. I don't want to have money influenced at any point in this mission, and that's, partially why. I mean, I tried to get some funding from the OWS to help with gas, and that didn't come through, and I thought my days were numbered when I left New York back in February, but apparently people get it, and so we've had small donations just from people that have kept me going, and I do have a part-time job that I do on the V, so I've managed to keep going, and I want to keep going.
I want to help you keep going as well. And as by way of that, I'd like to advise our listeners that for those wishing to get in touch with you or to learn more about you and the extraordinary work that you're doing and the people that are accompanying you, they can email you at janetwilson79, that's JANETWILSON 79 at gmail.com. And, of course, can find her on her website, WW's, of course, occupytheroads.com. And be sure to Google Janet Wilson as well. Is there any other way that you'd like to have people get in touch with you, either to donate or to participate?
There's also the website for Occupy the Roads, which is just Janet at Occupy the Roads. And then Tino was an original Zuccotti Park camper, and he's with me on the RV as well, and we're taking a couple more people from here. So,
well, let's talk about the people you brought with you. Who are they, and what should we know about them?
I've had a total of 8 people on the RV at different times. But right now, Tino's my right-hand person and instrumental in helping. He did all the pictures from the Occupy Zuccotti when the 99-mile march came in. So we have 700 pictures up on Facebook. People can see exactly what went on because the pictures are very clear. They say pictures worth 1,000 words, and that is exactly what they will see. They will see the police contorting this man's body who was just a drummer, and he was arrested for
drumming.
Peace, I think it was, but he's an excellent drummer. This, and then.
Yeah. Well, guess what? I don't think I can take any more of this. Number one, because it's too painful to listen to, and also at the same time, it's too wonderful. Janet, tell me, do you have any last words of advice that you might give people who want to become an activist like yourself?
Well, I would say to those that have the ability that don't have the ability to go out, that maybe are working but have that can help with funding, that would be a good thing. To those that actually can get out that maybe aren't working, it would be nice to have a caravan of 25 vehicles going down the road with the message, so there's lots of room there. I would say those that are in the community that want to do or can't do either, maybe get involved with your community. There's a lot of community gardens going in, but especially get involved with your community when it comes to education, in what's going on, please remove yourself from the television, because you're not getting the full story on the regular news channels. If you want the true story, go on the internet, find out what you can. But definitely we have to, my personal opinion is that we have to change out some of Congress if we're going to make this work. And I know that the elections are staggered, and that probably is done for a reason, so we can't just go in for Congress and start over. I would like to have a do-over. But since we can't do that, I'm saying to people, find people that are worthy of being elected and bringing the voice to Washington, because we definitely need that. So there's lots of people who can do in the background.
Well, there's no argument here, and certainly no argument, I'm sure, amongst our listeners. I would also invite you to, if you're not already on LinkedIn, and I believe you are, to visit the Occupy Everywhere site up there, which has almost 600 members now, so that if geographically you're not close enough to a Occupy group to be able to get a personal experience, at least you'll be able to have a chance online to be able to share thoughts with some very, very fine thinkers and very, very active people who sometimes can be just as active from behind a desk as you and I can be on the front lines. So, Janet Wilson, this is Jerry Ashton thanking you again on behalf of 15 Minutes of Fact for WGRNradio.com for spending some time with us. And I want my listeners again to contact Janet, if you would, at janet@occupytheroads.com, and visit her website, occupytheroads.com. Jerry Ashton signing off. Thanks so much.